Welcome, I am Ákos Kungl and I will give you a short walkthrough to the poster. In our poster, we studied self-sustained probabilistic computing on spike-based neuromorphic hardwares, and here in this poster we review two works where we used ideas from computational neuroscience to realize learning systems on neuromorphic hardware. The model we took inspiration from are so-called probabilistic models. More closely, we took inspiration from sampling-based models. In these models, we assume that the inherently noisy neural activity is not just a nuisance or a measurement imperfection, but this is actually a hallmark of an ongoing sampling-based computation. So if we look at this example and we look at this ambiguous image, then we would say that our neural activity visits different states in the state space and samples whether this picture is rather has more rabbitness or more duckiness. Zooming in, we used a particular model where we realize sampling from binary distributions using spiking neural networks. In this theory, we associate a binary state to each neuron based on its spiking behavior. For example, as you can see, if a neuron has spiked and now it is in its refractory period, then we associate a state 1 and otherwise a state 0. Using this theory, we make an immediate connection, an analogy to Boltzmann machines for machine learning, and hence we can use ideas from machine learning for our neuromorphic implementation. As you can see, we used a restricted Boltzmann machine approach. But there is a caveat with this model. Namely, this framework assumes that each neuron receives independent Poisson input to realize this stochasticity. This is problematic from two points of view. For example, this assumes that in the brain each neuron is able to get independent Poisson noise, which is at least not probable, and at the same time it requires for a neuromorphic implementation that we provide independent noise to each and every neuron. And in our first paper we review, which is from Dominic Doyle from 2019, we studied this phenomenon more closely in computer simulations. And here we took several networks, several restricted Boltzmann machines without explicit noise, which then feed their own spiking activity to other networks as a background noise. And by that, we realized a network of networks in which each subnet realizes an independent function and they feed each other with noise. So each subnet sees the activity of the other network as a background noise, and by that the complete network is deterministic while we treated each subnetwork as a probabilistic model. And on the picture you see, as we realized, for example, pattern completion in this approach. In a second project, we applied the stochastic sampling approach to the BrainScales 1 neuromorphic system. This is a mixed analog signal hardware, which means that the neurons are implanted in analog circuits, but the communication between them is digital. A single module holds 200,000 neurons and 40 million synapses, and it has a 10,000 times fold acceleration compared to the emulated biological real-time. As any analog system, it features fixed pattern noise, which means that each and every neuron is slightly different. The idea is that due to the robustness of the underlying framework, we can overcome these limitations. And hence, we implemented our sampling network on the hardware, and we used it first to classify images from the MNIST dataset. And as you can see, that with training, we could actually successfully do it, and we reach a similar error ratio as an equivalent software simulation. Further, we applied it to pattern completion experiment where we only present a partial image from our image and let the network complete it to a digit. And as you can see, it took approximately 50 milliseconds biological equivalent time, or 5 microseconds walk clock time, and this corresponds to a 2 times 10 to the 5 images per second throughput on this hardware. About the ongoing work, so sampling on accelerated neuromorphic hardware has found an interesting application in simulating quantum many-body problems. You can read it in the arXiv publication, but it is still an ongoing work. Second, we are working on spike-based on-chip learning, where we would like to use purely STDP-like local plasticity to train these stochastic sampling networks. And finally, we would like to make some connections to real experiments. This would be an interesting point to discuss afterwards. Here you can see the electronic visions working group in Heidelberg, who are behind this project and all our foundings. And an important point is that you can use the hardware. As part of the Human Brain Project, the Neuromorphic platform is meant to be accessible for the scientific community. In order to use it for your own research, get in touch with us, and for that you can check out the Silicon Brains webpage on the Human Brain Project website. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the discussions.